Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new guided tour, fully voiced by yours truly, of my Minecraft server, which has been dead for 2 years, but that's not the point. The point is there's a lot of builds here that require the world to see them. Why? Well, they have a lot of stories to tell, that's for sure, and I, personally, well, they hold a special place in my heart, let's call it that. We begin our journey right here. This Minecraft server had some sort of you can call it a hub, a central hub, and it's this flying island over here. Where did the idea come from? Frankly, I'm not quite sure myself, even though it was my idea. It has just been, well, 5 years since we've done it. I also want to say that this server was firstly made on the 1.14.5 and then later it was moved to 1.16.5, and since then we haven't really had an option to update the version because of the caves and cliffs updates that just completely destroyed world generation beyond that point. So the server is still 1.16.5, so there's none of those fancy new blocks. It's crazy how time flies, right? Anyway, this central hub has some interesting things to it. Certainly there's a gallery of players, which of course there's me and there's my two that help the most with building some of this stuff over here, and there are some other players that should be remembered as well for what they did, for their achievements here, which are honestly not quite bad themselves. And except for that, there's not really much to see here, except for perhaps the most important thing, the map, which has been outdated for over 2 years now. I have no will to make this thing again, although the world looks a bit differently now. Here, there's a lot of things missing still, so, you know, don't reference it later. However, there's one more thing. The thing over here is nicely hidden. You can see maps of every town / city on Minecraft server, and yeah, you can basically see how big they are in comparison to one another, which is quite an interesting thing to see because, well, there's about 20 of them, which is quite a lot, and it might be hard to compare them regularly. So we made little maps to compare them like this. Oh, and hey, there's something I forgot. So there was this silly idea I had to make kind of a digital world just for, for fun, so new players can do stupid shit. So when you have this computer over here right next to my magnificent statue, yeah, we click this little mouse over here, this little button, and just hop on the computer. This beautiful music should play, but well, the refresh rate is not. There we go. See, the refresh rate is not really good, but yeah, basically it should be immediate as soon as you click this button. And this is kind of an abandoned idea. As you can see over here, we had plans to make it a lot bigger, but we made just a few apps and just some silly stuff, really. Like you have Reddit, you have Gadu Gadu, which probably most people won't know what it is. You have Internet Explorer, which is basically a stupid, silly gag that, yeah, the server, it's not loading. Yeah, that's funny as shit, you gotta give us that. We have a magnificent, I don't know why I made a screenshot, I haven't touched F2, it's kind of weird, but anyway. You have to forgive us the silly humor. I think when we made this, we weren't yet adults considered by law anyway, so that's a thing to keep in mind, I suppose. I'm not gonna show you the rest of the apps. I think those two aren't even finished, because how do you make Red Dead Redemption 2 in Minecraft? I don't know. So that's all of the stuff here, and we will continue our journey. Continue is a strong word. I would say start our journey, really, because that wasn't really a journey yet. We will start it in the biggest city of them all, the one that started it all, and the one in which we haven't really had plans yet. Alright, so we're here on this beautiful morning in what is our biggest and first city we've built here. It was back in the days when we haven't really had, well, plans, any plans really, on what we want to make here, so we kind of did everything, hey. Now, I'm not claiming all of the builds here are mine. I think a lot of them are, but I'm gonna precisely state if a building is mine as to not claim credit. I think that's understandable. Anyway, to describe this city is really hard for me because you see, there is such nuance in every building here. Now, maybe that's an overstatement because a lot of these buildings are, well, generic village structures that are just generated with the world, because yes, this was a village before we transformed it into this magnificent city, if I do say so myself. Well, first of all, the city is so big that it has administrative districts, right? It has borders that mark each district. I think it's very clear in case of this city. This is the part we called Alt Hood, because, well, you can see the buildings are run down, and that's not by accident. There was a player here that built all of this stuff. It's not a lot of stuff, but it is some stuff. There was more stuff before that stuff was blown up, but by I don't even remember who it was. It was over 5 years ago, actually, so it's hard for me to say. I think it was 6 years ago now. Yeah, it was 6 years ago. It's hard for me to say. I don't remember myself. There was a really dense forest. It still is, some sort. I think one player just made a really big forest, and some of us didn't like it, and it burned down. I don't remember who did this, but yeah, a lot of stuff went wrong in this place. But hey, there is some stuff I'm gonna put myself into game mode 3 here to showcase stuff that's hidden normally, and I'm gonna also give myself night vision. Oh, right, I have oh shit. Well, never mind. I forgot that my Minecraft is in Italian. Well, that's something I did not really think before to change that. Well, that's on me. I fully admit. Now there's some dungeons made here. I don't remember for what exact purpose, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I do remember that here, for example. Yeah, and there's even a sign memorizing this, that there was a really big structure, a skyscraper of some sorts, that was really ugly. It was basically a big giant yellow rectangle that's not here anymore. But yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that was here, it's not here anymore. Like this player's house. Oh, also, I'm sorry for the lag, it's just that there is so much stuff in here that it's basically impossible to run this game smoothly. With shaders on top of that, it's incredibly hard. Anyway, as you can see, some people made like giant ass structures below their houses, like great basements. I don't know what this Hall of Fame even is. It was never finished. Basically the same amount of content on the ground here that you can clearly see, that there is also below ground that you cannot see. There's some stuff like this that I'm not really allowed to show on YouTube, so I'm not gonna do that. Just know that there's some, well, cults that people made. I think that's an appropriate description of what was happening back there. Yeah, there's like a lot of new ones, like, well, I know, there's like Athenian hoplite spears and shields, because, well, this is some sort of acropolis that we built. Now, I promise that the builds get better and better as we go on, because I'm basically kind of trying to go chronologically by the stuff we built. It's not really that, but it's that our build aesthetics got better year by year as we played, and I'm sorry for such a low frame rate, Jesus Christ. We have a lot of monuments built here, memorizing a lot of stuff basically that was happening on the server. We have some sort of it's a builder podium and also a museum here. There is a whole giant museum memorizing events as they happened in real life, basically. I'm not gonna go through all of that because that's too much time spent for talking about nonsense. But there is also the lore section, and here you can find real pearls. And I'm talking real forgotten pearls that basically tell stories that are insane in terms of that there were a lot of builds here that seemingly had no connections between them, but we made up so much lore to connect all the stuff together. There was a silverfish tower built from silverfish bricks. It was by mistake, of course, but that made history because you see, that player who built that tower got so pissed off that he pulled out TNT, destroyed the tower, and the whole server crashed out of lag. So we built a giant silverfish monument that was later destroyed when this museum took its place, but we made it as a skeleton here to people come and see. Oh, some sort of prehistoric giant silverfish lived here before us, right? And there's also a monument for this tower, again, over here. It's in a form of forever stuck silverfish on one block. That is basically, yeah, it's just here. There's also like a monument for the RP series that we've made on this server, but that's not important. That's not what's important. You people want to see some amazing builds. What I can say is that this greenhouse was certainly built by me. It was inspired by some sort of Victorian era English greenhouses that I really enjoy the look of. As you can see over here, it's a really nice place to just kind of kick back, you know, and just chill. There's like a nice windmill because there's also a whole agricultural sector that's completely thought of. Well, not completely. There's some places that haven't finished it yet, but that's beyond the point. Point is, we tried to make the word as coherent as possible. You have a little like bay area over here with a little boat. This is an island that we refer to as the giant chaplack, which I'm not gonna translate to English because I don't know what that would be. And there is a giant dragon statue on that island, which I'm a fan of. We call it the, you know, the Ouroboros or something, that kind of the mythical dragon that ate itself. We made like a lore thing of it here. There was like a PvE arena over here, for example. And, well, Zombieland, basically. We made it into some sort of movie promotional arena. I don't know what was the reason behind this, really. I'm not certain. It was a long time ago. Aside of the obvious Acropolis sector, we have also Japan-inspired buildings over here, like some sort of fortress. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of stuff over here that I could go and describe underground as well, but I don't see the point of it. There's too much to go through. But we do have also the main metro station. Now this is something that was a huge project and was supposed to connect every city with themselves in survival as well. So you wouldn't need creative and commands or whatever to teleport to other cities. You would just hop into a minecart, you know, go forward, wait for about 5 minutes, and arrive at your destination. Yeah, this is the longest tunnel, by the way. It really takes 5 minutes to go from point A to point B because it's over 3,000 blocks. It's over 3,000 blocks long. And it's insane how much work it took. Of course, we had tools like World Edit, but it's still a lot of work. There's a lot of distinct districts here because I'm like I said, we didn't really had a coherent idea of what this place like will be and wants to be. There was a lot of players just building random ideas they had. Like, for example, this, I don't know what this is. It's some sort of a gambling machine that as I recall correctly, it does not work anymore, but it did, and it was certainly an interesting thing to look at. This palace over here and this Japanese inspired constructions that were not mine, but I must say, sadly, the player who built this built it from tutorial, which I'm not a fan of, and I wasn't a fan of him doing that, so I'm not gonna go brag about this and that, because it's basically it's not something I consider our achievement really, because if it's followed by tutorial, hey, it's not ours, right? I'm fully aware of that, and I will admit it that it's nothing to brag about, right? But this city is honestly incredible for the amount of content and our history, the player's history that built the city from ground up, because it wasn't any coordinated project. It was basically what you think of goes, right? For example, this house over here in the garage will have a car that resembles some sort of old Rolls Royce or something like that, and right next to that will be like some sort of medieval Bavarian style build, right? It doesn't matter what you think of goes. We had the most freedom to build in this city, exactly. And for what an uncoherent mess it is, I honestly find it astonishing for how good it looks. It may be because you basically it's so big that it just about fits into the render distance, but it's just something amazing that I really like to showcase a lot. Now, as we go through the outskirts of this city, I'm gonna talk about a little bit about the lore that we made for this huge city over there. Basically, because it's so incoherent, as I already said, we thought the best general explanation would be that it's a mishmash of a lot of different cultures around the world here that we built. And because of that, in the lore, basically 2 civil wars happened. And the second civil war marked the point of full integration into one city. Before that, it was kind of a very uncivilized place, because of all the wars happening all the time, because all of the cultural differences. But we made it so this is basically a gem of what happens if different cultures, instead of fighting, cooperate, right? So we made it as kind of a symbol of international, tribal cooperation, and that's what the city stands for. And honestly, I couldn't think of anything better for this town. But now we're gonna head to the second city. Now, the second city on our list is Vice City. Yep. We basically, I think, agreed on one thing, that GTA Vice City is really good. So, because of the love that we shared to the 80s atmosphere and to the 80s style of that game, and we decided to build Vice City in Minecraft. Now, in terms of content, there's much less of it, and it's much more coherent, as you can see. Now, there's some F-16s patrolling the skies over here, that's for sure. That's an interesting thing. There is a really nice kind of yacht. I think a lot of the yachts and ships were generally built by me. Certainly, this place is really important for the server's history, because there were 2 players over here that sold booze. And that booze basically was I think it was a swiftness potion or something, but it became such a phenomenon that it was generally to be found everywhere around the server. Everyone had this. So it was kind of interesting to see how this sort of mini culture was created and was sustained by players. It's something that also always fascinates me, how these traditions, that small traditions that people make, can become basically small cultural stereotypes, right? Now, people around the world, basically, I'm not gonna show the poster behind me because I think it's a little controversial. But people around here, what's important to note is they were making embassies. It was sort of a diplomat city over here. It was also quite a good symbol of international cooperation, as I said, but in much more coherent and different style, because it's certainly the only sort of, well, not the only city. There's also another one that's semi-modern, but this is basically the most modern it gets, right? It's basically modern skyscrapers. Everything is very modern and modern and modern, right? I said this word too many times, so I'm gonna just continue showcasing some of the towers over here, that apartment buildings, hotels that have basically furnished every room, and it has a lot of stores, right? Has a lot of stories, I mean. Wow, my tongue is twisting here and there. I'm sorry for that. English is not my native language. I'm doing my best over here to stay on topic, to stay fluent. We also had a little bit of Easter eggs. For example, Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. There's this. I think I built this. I basically recreated the whole Five Nights at Freddy's sister location facility over here, which is an interesting thing to see. Here's the metro station thing. It's quite nice for what it is. It's a small thing. It's not really a big thing. It's not very important anyway. Nobody uses this anyway, because nowadays we just teleport everywhere. Everyone has creative mode. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, back in the days there were players that played survival here, and it was something useful for them, right? We have a place, a little place was inspired by the game DayZ, Elektrozavodsk, right? But we treated this town as a PvP arena. So I'm not gonna show this symbol, and I'm not gonna show what's here. I'm just gonna let you take a peek like that. But basically there were like sides. I'm not gonna show this red flag over there either, but there were like different sides, basically like America and the Soviets or whatever, and we had a gun plug-in, and we ran around these trenches and just shoot each other. And it was really fun. It was certainly fun to design these tanks. I think this is supposed to be like Panzer IV. This is like T-54 or something. I'm not quite sure. I'm not an expert or anything, but we treated it as a big PvP arena with some secrets in it as well, like sewers over here that you could basically use to traverse some parts of the arena or hide yourself, or basically remain unseen for the enemy as you just walk around the town or something. It was quite interesting to see, right? A little Coast Guard boats over here. There's a little destroyer over here that's also quite the thing. And on the outskirts over here, there is, I'm gonna show you the map, right? So there's a little bay over here that we treated as the main center of the world, basically. So there's a lot of sailboats, naturally. Trade vessels, other vessels, basically inspired by the 18th century English and Spanish frigates. And it's a really amazing build for the time it was built, because I think it's one of the older builds here, and it's the first build that looks, in my opinion, really good. And to end this, to wrap up, there's another frigate over here. I think we called it William Taylor, like the song. And right next to it, as I recall correctly, there was a little tiny submarine. Now let's go. And that submarine also has some interesting stuff inside. Like there is a sort of a radar or something, I don't know really. But I think it's really cute. A tiny little submarine. We spent a lot of time making this place as believable as possible, like every other city basically. So a lot of the buildings are fully furnished, and that's something to keep in mind. And there's one more thing that it's an interesting, well, maybe two more things actually. First, we have the only Wild West inspired town, obviously, and I think it's a really nice place for what it is. It's really just a small town next to Vice City that's heavily Wild West inspired. Other than that, well, there are some like abandoned villages over here that we made to indicate troublesome history of this region of the world. This place is something unique. We call it the Game Palace because there's a lot of really interesting game ideas. Apart from the ice boat race, which is really generic, right? This is the Tunnel of Death. If you do not know what it is, it's basically this. Right, I lost, and I ended up in lava. Oh well. It's a little fun challenge that's kind of scary. Invisible labyrinth over here. How this works, you basically ride a pig on a saddle with a carrot on a stick, and when you do it, you cannot see anything, right? But the hidden in that is a legit labyrinth. A little simple archery challenge, and the most stupid and simple game over here is probably rock, paper, scissors. Or basically flip the switch and the other player flips the switch on the same time, and you see who won, who lost. This is a little Connect 4 game. I'm certain a lot of people know what Connect 4 is. We made it work in Minecraft with the help of that's blue powder or something. I don't remember how it's called in English. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, bear with me because this is where the builds start getting a lot better. We have Venice. This is the most Italian-inspired state that we built. The Rialto Bridge, of course, very famous. This tower that I apologize I don't know the name of, but it's also inspired by the tower in Venice. We did not want to make Venice one-to-one, but I can assure you, because I've been to Venice, that I know how it looks like in real life. It's not that we don't know, and we're a bunch of stupid idiots who just basically want to recreate something we haven't been to. The most important thing is that we got the vibe, I think, quite well. Again, these buildings are a little less old. They're not 6 years old by now, they're only 5 years old. Basically, we have an administrative map over here of this entire region, and there is another one over here. It's a lot smaller than it looks like. There is a lot of content over here nonetheless. Like this little ship, this little schooner, I think that's how it was called, right? Full of cats. Gatto marinaio means basically cat sailor. We have a really nice Italian-inspired countryside, right? With stable, with windmills, with Monte Cassino, with a lot of small villages. We have a little island over here and a little lighthouse. Moving on, we have another city in this region, and that is called Tivoli, I think I recall correctly. That city is more ancient Rome inspired, so staying on the topic of Italy. I think this view from here basically summarized this whole region. You can see it almost entirely. The author of this city never finished it. I kind of had to finish some things for him. Now, there are some Easter eggs here as well, just like in Vice City. For example, here is Senatus Luporum, which means in Latin the Wolf Senate. As you can see, There is a wolf, there are other wolves around, and there is a cat in a cage for whatever reason. There are also other Easter eggs all around, basically. It would take a lot of time to show them all. Moving on, we have another region with the capital over here. It is a city fortress of a kind. This area on this giant wall was basically our favorite place to fight for a while. Here there is a little tiny market. I mean, it's not really tiny, it's quite big, honestly, for the size of the city. It is the smallest capital we have, which is unfortunate. There are smaller cities than this one, but as a capital, this one is certainly the smallest. It has a tiny little frozen over here bay or port, I don't know. It's really small. There's not much to it, not really. There's a lot of great Easter eggs over here. There was a secret fight club. I don't know, it's not a reference to the movie or anything. In this tunnel over here, there is a little... It's a maze, really. Those are... I know it's really dark in here, I'm sorry, but those are abandoned subway tunnels going left and right and everywhere, basically. It's a maze, let me tell you that much. Moving on, we have a little monastery here. And another little town called Starberg. It's basically an Austrian-inspired town. The one town that comes to mind, it's not Austrian, but it's close to Tyrol in Italy, called Vipitano. You can check it out. I think it's really... I mean, it doesn't hit as close as some other towns in Austria, for sure, but that's what inspired us to build it. Our first flying airship, I know it's not really good. It's one of the older ones, so you can blame it on just being old, I suppose, just not knowing better back then. We have a bog mansion over here. I have no idea who built this. I found it very far off map, so I'm guessing it was some sort of failed project of someone. But since I don't like that stuff, I don't like to keep buildings hidden away, although there still are a lot. There's no problem in moving this to the playable area, let's call it that. Now, in terms of the lore of this city, we can see some resemblance of what is mentioned in the books we wrote and what can be seen over here. For example, as you can see over here, there is a giant hole in the mountain. According to the lore we thought of, half of the city collapsed here. If you played a lot of games and played Skyrim in general, you can recall that the city of Winterhold had a similar story, and it was very convenient. Moving on to Taxonia, because it's only fit that we move from one mountain to another, right? A lot of people tell me, uneducated people, in my opinion, when they see this flag, they start writing stuff like Germany lost because it resembles the Nazi flag or something. My friend, have you seen the other Nordic flags in Europe? They all have one thing in common, and that is the cross. Now, what I would describe Taxonia as a fictional country is a mix of Bavarian, Latin, and Scandinavian cultures, so it has nothing to do with the Nazis. I'm sorry. Taxonia is my personal favorite fictional country that I made up. The symbol of this country is the red deer. There is, of course, a giant statue of the red deer here, and I think it's one of the best things I built. I'm not even kidding. Now, the idea behind this town, first and foremost, was that everyone would build their vacation homes. We have a little Christmas tree, and we have a general cozy atmosphere related to Christmas. Now, sometimes you need a break from the big civilization, right? These two little tree houses were a completely separate thing that some players, they wanted to start a new RP from ground up. They didn't want to participate in any of the great city buildings on the mainland or anything, so they built those little 2 tree houses. And there's a lot of forgotten stuff here, like there's like a little, I don't know what this is, solitude or something. We have a little island in this corner of the map, as you can see. Here is the Italy-inspired region, and we find ourselves on this island right now. There are little 2 villages on this island. It's nothing really special. It's certainly not the most unique, but there are some interesting structures over here, like this underwater parliament. Now there are a lot of towns that are built into the coastal cliff in Italy. And this is one of them. It's certainly inspired by the more southern towns and villages in Italy, like on Sicily. No. Just below our starting island, we find ourselves in the areas of Asbar. We have 2 little villages that are nothing really special, but we do have a map of this region. Temple structure. I'm not sure who built this. There is a big skeleton of some prehistoric creature that used to live here, which also indicates that this area was underwater, which is also quite interesting for the lore, right? We find ourselves some ancient structures below sand over here, and then there's our city, Asbar. A giant fortress. What I think of is like Persia when I look at this city. Generally, all the houses are furnished, so it's perfectly livable, although it's very cramped, and I'm not sure if it was anyone's player's first choice, to be honest. Egyptian-inspired sailboat over here, and there is another one over there. The area over here, by the way, has troublesome history. You see, we had very clear borders of where to build our stuff, as not to interrupt other players or change their plans because you want to build something else here. It was all to be arranged, but there was no arrangement here. So the troublesome history was also with this fort. It was very close to the other one. It's not regularly a problem, but there were a lot of disputes for this territory. Until one funny guy came here with a red block, ignited it, and it went kaboom. So instead of rebuilding this, we decided we might as well leave it as a symbol and make up insane lore about this. We basically made up a whole great war of this server, let's call it that. The Great Northern War. This is probably the best monument left over from this war. As you can see, there's a lot of nuance here, like this hole. Some cannonballs, right, landed over here and then shot straight through the wall. There is like a collapsed cannon over here. There is another old cannon over here. You can see an entire underground complex of rebels and stuff. The war did not end with capitulation. There was a lot of underground movement. What I am gonna take full credit for is this giant ship. It has 3 masts. It took 6 hours to complete, I think. It's one of my greatest achievements, I'll be honest. I really, really love this ship. It's fully furnished inside, of course. It has like 3 decks. Yeah, it has 3 decks precisely. It's just from the coast of the next country that we're gonna look at, and that country is Yamania, right there. Now, Yamania is something that I did not build, so I'm not gonna take any credit for this. However, there are some interesting things. This is, I think, inspired by a monument in Stalingrad. I'm not sure. So I'm gonna probably put a picture on the screen so you can see what I mean. Now we're gonna go through a lot here. Like you can see, there are villages everywhere. There are a lot of castles here. It's our medieval paradise, right? There's one thing, and that is the agricultural sector of this country is unfinished, unfortunately. But that doesn't matter. We have his main capital over here, which is honestly insane. It's very big. It almost creates as much lag as the first city we've been to. But what we must visit, there are some interesting landmarks over here. First and foremost, we have a really nice, beautiful cathedral, which is just as nice inside as it is outside. and I think it's a very interesting thing to see. I'm sorry for the lag, as I said. It's very hard to not to lag in this area. And what we can find over here, which is interesting in terms of lore, is a library where we store every single book that was ever written from A to Z. Now there's quite a lot of books, honestly. Those are all lore books, but not only. We tried to collect every book we can possibly find on our server. You have the blacksmith, you have another cathedral. This one I think was inspired by Notre Dame, more or less. I believe we have I don't know, a mage tower or something very tall. I think is one of the tallest buildings on the server actually. We have a tournament arena, which is quite nice, if I do say so myself. I think there are some underground catacombs here as well. There's of course the main castle. I really am sorry for the lag, I just realized how insane it is. But yeah, we have some catacombs over here, of course we do. There's quite a lot of it actually. I thought there was less than that, so I'm very happy to see that. We have more castles, we have more villages. I think according to the lore, this place is the first place where the royal family of Yamania rested. Another castle. You know, this, you can imagine that it's all wheat fields, because this is something that wasn't finished by this guy, but there was supposed to be a lot of wheat fields over here. So just imagine there are wheat fields everywhere. Another castle, another little village, a little small ship. Now this city has probably the most troubled history, as you can see. Those ruins also weren't a part of the project, right? They were here before. There was a giant city before that. That was very ugly, I'll be honest, it was very ugly. But I'm not for any grieving or anything, so I'm not really a fan of what happened to this city. It was also completely blown apart. What I am happy about though is that this region after that landed in the hands of the guy who built Yamania, and so he rebuilt this city in his style and named it accordingly Neustadt, which in German means a new city, right? So it's a new city, it's a completely rebuilt city from ground up. It has a couple of interesting things, a small church, small barracks, town hall, and there's a lot of content in Yamania that I unfortunately can't really tell anything more about. The problem with Yamania is that it's entirely not my country, right? It's not something I've built. So I cannot say much more than that, because I don't want to lie to you. I don't know what the guy who built this wants me to say, so I'm not gonna make up some stuff. I'm just gonna say whatever he told me or whatever I can see. So we'll move on to our final destination. Now before we go to our final country, I want to show two more locations that maybe are not very important and very impressive by the builds, but they are very important or interesting by the lore. This is a very lore-wise interesting town. It's an old forgotten fishing village over here on this island. As you can see, quite far, but not really, from the other parts of the world. What is interesting about this is that it used to belong to another country that used to build a lot of warships here. What happened to this town? If I do recall correctly, it has to do with the Northern War, as most of the stuff in the north have. So yeah, well, it was probably destroyed by the navy of the enemy country, right? Now, the last thing before we go is this little jungle town. What's interesting about this town is certainly none of the builds, except for maybe this Aztec temple, Aztec inspired. What is interesting is, I mean, it's the architecture here is a little bit different than anywhere, but it's really very simple. This, and I shit you not, is the most interesting part of this town. Why? This is the first thing that was ever built on this server, and I think we cherish it dearly, because it was basically used to protect ourselves from the monsters as soon as we spawned in, because this was the original spawn of the world before we changed it to the island. We called it Buddha, which means dog house. Now we're gonna head into the very interesting region and country of Bellmare, country and city really. I think it's one of the most impressive. It's the latest built, basically, the newest certainly. I think it has a lot to offer in terms of pretty builds. It's basically the peak of what we reached here with our building abilities, but not only that. What is it inspired by? The Romanian region of Transylvania. Which means, of course, we're gonna put a lot of vampires in here, and vampire references. First and foremost, we have 2 castles. This giant castle, which is the biggest castle on the entire server, is a castle of a family of vampires. Now, I do not recall the names of each family, and I'm not gonna take credit for this castle because it's not my build. It's the build of the same guy who built Yamania, and I appreciate what he did here because this is an enormous and amazing looking castle. But I am gonna take credit for this one because this one I built. It's inspired by the Romanian castle Pele. I think that's how it's pronounced. If not, I'm sorry. And it's a castle where another family of vampires lives. Now this castle, because it's so giant, it's not really finished in terms of interior. This one, it's fully furnished. And it's like a maze inside. Now, you can see that there's a small village here that's also inspired by Romanian villages, by the way. You can imagine that these people are quite frankly terrorized by both of these families that keep fighting for that delicious human meat in that little village. There is even a rundown house over here that has some sort of Easter egg connected to this. Some sort of guy who basically is crying about being locked in this house and attacked by vampires left and right. Yeah, you can imagine why. It's probably not the best and safest place to live. However, I must say, I think I overdone myself with this castle. I really enjoy the way it looks like, and I really enjoyed the interior as well. As you can see, it has a lot of stuff going on inside. It has like a wine room. It has chess room. There is like a lot of corridors, a lot of different areas, and yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff. You get my point. Yeah, there's like really like this design, by the way, of the clock. You can get lost easily in this castle. What I want to show you one more thing though. Over here, there's the throne room. I think it's quite impressive, and we have a little cellar over here, and that cellar leads to a maze downstairs over here filled with monsters, and it's very dangerous and funny. And yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of hidden stuff underground. Because the server has a lot of history, there will be a lot of stuff that's cut and moved underground, like this fortress, for example. I generally don't like getting rid of any work that was already done, so I'd much rather just hide it from plain sight, but make it so that it remains somewhere to be found, like this fortress. There's a lot of stuff like that. Moving on from the castles, we have a little fortress on an island here, and finally our capital of this region, Bellmare itself. It's a really nice looking town. It has quite a lot of content. It has a pretty amazing cathedral. I'm taking full credit for it. I built it from ground up, and I think it turned out pretty well. I'm not a Catholic. I do not attend any church, so I think I did pretty well. There's another church over here, and there's of course the farm area over here and more farmlands. Fortress. It's more oriented towards protecting the city from oncoming ships, and of course there's a lighthouse. Floresti. It's a small town that's also a part of the Bellmare country. There's like stables, there's a little monastery over there. But there has been a lot of like terraforming going on here, and I'm not taking any credit for this. It's my friend's place. He started building something that resembles the Calmarian Union, which was a failed historical project to mash all the Scandinavian cultures together into one giant country. He started building his capital over here. I'm not sure if he will ever finish it, but I think it looks very nice, very unique, certainly. Well, he certainly did all the islands here by himself, by hand. And he started building this nice little highway that basically cuts off here, and we don't know where it leads. And that will be it. There's a lot more things I could show you, but there's really no point in doing that. Most of the stuff that I left out are either not safe for YouTube, because yes, there are places like this, of course there are. Some players just can't build normal stuff, you know, they're too good for that. But there's also other stuff that I really don't want to show on YouTube. I think there are places that are better, like, left obscure. So thank you for watching. If you clicked on this video, I'm not sure how you found it, but I really am happy that you were here and you accompanied me. It's probably gonna be a bit long, maybe not as much. So with that being said, that'll be all, and thank you ladies and gentlemen for watching that video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite video on the Citadel.